Okay, all right, let's go ahead, bring the meeting to order, please. For today, May 5th at 1:30 for Parks, Recreation and Refuse Committee meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
Directors Fardanish
Here.
and Peterson.
Sure. I make a recommendation that we switch the agenda item number 3. If we could discuss that first, since we have the consultant here already. I guess he needs to get going after this. So if it's okay, we could discuss the Everest Park entrance update plans and costs first.
Perfect.
Okay, all right.
Okay, super. Well, let me give you a little bit of background and we'll just then dive into some of the technical details. I shared with you at your last committee meeting that we had submitted plans to the county for permitting a few months ago. And we were running into some challenges with ADA compliance. And to provide a little background on this, we've known for a while this was going to be potentially a challenging issue. We have that road that you're familiar with that goes into the driveway, that goes to the park, that is steeper than, the grade is steeper than ADA access would permit. When Brightview did the original conceptual design work, they took the position that maybe we could call this a roadway, and therefore it wouldn't, sidewalk wouldn't have to fully comply. Then when we engaged, and so that was a thought. I didn't know if that was going to fly, but then when we engaged MIG, their strategy was a little different. They said, "Well, look at this. We will improve compliance at the parking lot. So from the 88 parking stalls into the park, we'll be 100% compliant." And that was the approach that was taken with the original set of plans that you looked at last fall. The county has turned around and basically said, neither of those concepts are going to fly. You've got to achieve ADA compliance from the public street into the park in order to do any improvements in the park. I'm probably ad-libbing this a bit. When we look at the current the original plan was to put a sidewalk next to the existing driveway at the same slope as the driveway with a curb, which is like a curb and gutter, and then a raised sidewalk, and it would follow the same slope down to the existing sidewalk, which terminates behind the softball field. So that's the plan that was originally submitted to the county that was rejected or denied. So the team has tried to review a bunch of alternatives about how we can achieve strict compliance from the sidewalk up on Gibson Street down into the park. And so we've attached and then Vince, maybe you can walk us through these diagrams. It's difficult to see the changes on a couple of these because it looks just like that's a sidewalk. But in fact, in order to accommodate the reduced slope and these landing areas, it requires a pretty substantial change to the sidewalk. So maybe Vincent, I'll turn it over to you and you can try to explain what is proposed now and how it will change.
Gladly. Thanks again for pushing this up a little bit. But yeah, we can get into the design. So right here, this is the earlier plan that we were talking about, how this sidewalk was supposed to follow the grade of the driveway, which is at 12.3%. That's over the ADA compliance running slope, which is at 8.33% if you're doing a ramp. And that's what we show here. Ramps, they can't go on forever. They have to be in segments of roughly 30 feet length, and then they have to have a level landing around like 6 feet long or 5 foot long, depending on how wide your ramp is. So we're showing a series of ramps with a level landing, which is shown in yellow. And we perfectly meet the desired elevation drop to get to the park with ADA compliance. So this is what we're proposing. And one of the major issues with this is that if you're providing a ramp, you have to have guardrails. And there's going to be a guardrail along both sides of this entire run all the way down to the screen portion right here. And I have a 3D view of this, so it's a little easier to see. We're looking at, if you're looking at the plan we were just looking at, this green portion is the proposed, and the brown is the existing. And a bit of a scale, there's a retaining wall on the left side of this walkway, which is holding up that dirt and trees next to it. That's going to be around 3.67 feet tall at the highest point, which is around right here. And this retaining curb, we're going to treat it as another secondary retaining wall. It's going to be at its highest point, 2.62 feet tall. So that's at this point. So none of these are really too tall. They're not going to be over 6 feet, but it is still tall enough to be considered a trip hazard or fall hazard and require some retaining guardrails as well.
So, but like, it probably doesn't look that different, but in fact, it changes the way this is constructed by pretty significantly. So we had a few concerns about this that we wanted to bring to your attention. One is because the original plan, we spec'd out a fairly narrow sidewalk, saying our primary goal was just to get separation from the street, from the vehicles to the pedestrians. We didn't expect people in wheelchairs, or very many of them, to be using this anyways, but it was really for safety, to get separation from the vehicles for pedestrians. And so we didn't build it real wide because we thought if there happened to be like two strollers or a wagon and a stroller passing each other, somebody could just jump off the curb because it was only going to be 6 inches long and let the stroller pass. Well, once we went to this style of ramp, this sidewalk that was essentially an ADA ramp with these handrails on both sides, we've lost the ability for people to kind of get out of the way. It's gonna feel like a tighter walkway because you've got these handrails on both sides. Additionally, in order to accommodate the handrails, the whole sidewalk had to be made wider, about 1 foot. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, about a foot wider than we originally proposed. Well, that foot is coming out of the existing roadway. So when we make the sidewalk wider to accommodate ADA, we've lost a foot in the roadway. And so the roadway was already somewhat tight with like 2 large trucks passing. It was already kind of a tight arrangement. Now it's safer with the sidewalk because at least the pedestrians are out of the roadway, ideally. But the roadway is going to be effectively tighter. And then additionally, with this really tall curb on the corner and the handrails, my feeling is that the drivers are actually it'll feel even tighter it'll feel like you're losing more than a foot, because now the vehicles are gonna have to scoot over further because of it's just like driving next to a K-rail on the highway. You just scoot over, right? It feels uncomfortable. You don't want to be near it, so you scoot over. So effectively the road becomes even narrower. Now, this isn't obviously a high speed, no one's traveling fast, or there shouldn't be. It's a fairly short driveway. But we wanted to share that with you. Like, okay, does that feel acceptable? We have, and I guess before I go into what could we do about it, this change that's proposed right now, just to get ADA compliance on this section, is going to add about $130,000 in costs, based on the estimate that Vincent's worked up. We don't really know what it'll be, but that's the cost estimate because of all the retaining work, concrete work, and even some paving work at the top. So there's a couple things that are that concerned us when we saw the proposal. One was, once you put these guardrails in, these handrails, and Vincent provided a copy, we included in your packet, what it might look like. That's sort of the styles of handrails, yeah, like that, but on each side. You've kind of we've really constrained the width of this, right? You can no longer sort of step out into the roadway to let somebody pass. We don't. In talking to Melissa, we have less. I have fewer concerns about people in scooters and wheelchairs getting down there than I do just the average pedestrian, which is gonna be a mom and a wagon full of soccer balls and chairs and kids, and these wagons are bulky. So like in this area here, based on what's been designed right now, 2 wagons won't be able to pass each other. I mean, I don't know how often that's gonna occur, but it is not, this is not so an ideal, we would have started out with something like this.
So the original plan or thought was that we wouldn't have to worry about this because we thought it was gonna be part of the whole driveway, so we were hoping that the county would allow it, correct?
Yeah, and I don't, so my understanding is that we went in and originally with the position that we were creating fully compliant access from the ADA parking stalls
Yeah,
into the rest of the park.
okay,
But the county's position is more strict, and it's not necessarily a surprise, but it's more strict at saying, hey, look, that is not a public road. So therefore you do not get to claim the exemption of just meeting natural grade. It's also not natural grade. It's been graded to its existing location. So therefore you must achieve compliance all the way to the public street.
okay. So this isn't because we chose to put in a sidewalk.
No, this was, my understanding is this is gonna be, even if we had not
Yeah.
proposed a sidewalk,
Yeah,
the county,
Anything you did to that, the county would have come in and said, you gotta do this.
Any improvement to
Any
the park would have
improvement
kicked in the
Fine,
ADA
okay.
requirement with
All right.
this entry, yeah.
so yeah, I was hoping we could do it.
I guess I have to see what other things we could do and how much they cost. I mean, I don't like that idea, but if it's gonna be prohibitive on the cost, we could put Melissa out there to guide traffic or something.
yeah, so I think
We
there's
already
two,
do.
yeah, there's two issues I think to concern ourselves with. One is the actual width of the ADA ramp, which is, again, the primary purpose is we know we have pedestrians who use it. This isn't just an ADA ramp. This is not just, if this were just gonna serve persons who are mobility challenged, there might be a handful who would use it on a weekend. It would, that quite honestly, this is a great solution for that. But its purpose was primarily to accommodate all the pedestrians that park, or all the people that park out on Gibson, of which on a Saturday, or at any one time, there might be 40 cars or more of people parked out there. And maybe more than that.
All the way
To the donut shop, right? You've been out there.
Done that.
Yeah. So it's primarily people who are pedestrians. We wanted them separated from the vehicular traffic for safety reasons. And so there are two concerns that I see. One is is the sidewalk with the guardrails, is it sufficient for that pedestrian use? And Melissa has pointed out something when we talked about this before that said, the way the games are scheduled and stuff and such, usually people are not we don't have major crowds coming and going simultaneously. People are coming like a half hour, an hour before their game, and then they leave when the game's over. Those don't typically coincide, but there will be people coming and going. There's no way to avoid that. This is a pretty, maybe 150 feet of this is gonna be in this sort of constrained kind of area. So it's, it's possible you're gonna run into those conflicts where two people are coming at each other with strollers or wagons, and someone's gonna have to back up because there's not a way
How
around.
often does this happen? I mean, if we're only talking about 1/10 of 1% of the time, then I'm saying,
I mean, anecdotally, yeah, maybe once or twice a weekend. It's pretty, the way we program things is because of the entrance, right? Is to try to avoid the entry and exit at the same time. We try to empty the park and then refill it, right? So, it's hard to say, I can't put a number on it, right? But you see it a couple times a weekend, where there might be something going sort of simultaneously, right? Not enough to cause me major concern, yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
So the solution to that, if you wanted two-way, let's say you had a parent tugging a wagon with chairs and soccer balls and a toddler or two up the hill, and one with the same situation coming down the hill. If we wanted to accommodate to allow those to pass each other within this area, the solution is to widen the sidewalk. So that in and of itself is, I mean, there's a cost to that. It's not impossible, like, you know, it's, the issue is, okay, what's its impact then to the roadway? If we widen the sidewalk, it's taking up more space out of the roadway. We already have a concern about losing a foot of the driveway. And the solution to widening the driveway, whether it's to accommodate additional sidewalk or just additional driveway, would be to widen it on the south side of the driveway. And I know, Vince, you had a map at one point that kind of, it's possible, I mean, we have room there, but we've got some infrastructure, we have a storm drain inlet in the middle of it, and a curb, and it would change, you know, the area of construction. And I don't know, Vincent, I don't know if you have a better diagram that would show the concerns or what those options are.
I can look around.
We're trying to modernize this park and we're putting all this time and effort and money into it. And then we're just gonna have this entrance that's just gonna be crowded. I mean, it's just not gonna give a good feeling about trying to get into the park. It's like going to the Trader Joe's, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to get in there and it's like cars everywhere and everyone's always frustrated. I mean, so I'd like to see other options where if we could widen the area, I mean, we may have to spend more money, but at least trying to do it.
So there's two issues then, again, what we were talking about before, if you could live with the width of the sidewalk and ADA ramp and just say, hey, we accept that every once in a while there's gonna be a wagon that's not gonna pass a stroller. We accept that. Then the work that to potentially widen the roadway could be done later because it's all on the south side and it wouldn't impact the existing, what will be the proposed or the new sidewalk or ADA ramp. However, if you want to accommodate both issues, then you've got to, you know, we certainly don't want to build this new sidewalk and then decide it's too tight.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, our concern, I think we walked away from this a month ago, it was like, geez, it is really tight. It will probably work, but we wanted to kind of warn you of it. And then, you know.
How wide is it gonna be?
So how much space is between the handrails, Vincent?
Right now, there's around 4 feet.
Oh, that's not that wide at all. That's pretty narrow.
It's like, well, it meets ADA requirements.
Yeah. So right now it's 4.5, but with the guardrails in and the handrails in, it'll be around 4.
Yeah, because I mean, that barely 2 people could pass without any.
Yeah, so you have to think about what ends up happening is that this, I mean, I hate to use the soccer mom analogy, but that's what we've got. And so you've got, you know, like oversized jogging strollers that are bulky, these wagons, which are really pretty common now, that are bulky. These aren't the little red wagons that you know, from our childhood. They're these, you know, you've seen the wagons you buy at Costco, they pop out and they're, you know, they're 2 feet wide or something. You know, they're not likely to pass in that area.
Just put one of those lights, you know,
Just
turns green, you go down, and then it's,
Oh yeah, the green, red, we play green light, red light all the time.
yeah.
So if you're convinced, if you think that the 4 feet isn't wide enough and that needs to be 4.5 feet or 5 feet, which would probably eliminate most of our concerns if it were wider, then the issue is, okay, now the road is gonna be 2 feet narrower unless we widen it on the other side. Because we're really constrained on this one corner. Vincent, I think what you've shown on that little, we really can't do much on this north side of the driveway, right? We're
Right
as
here.
tight as we can go.
Yeah, with that corner, right?
If you widen the sidewalk, do the road widening later, are 2 monster trucks gonna be able to go down and up without their mirrors hitting and all that stuff? That would be my concern about widening the sidewalk.
What's our existing road width right there in that yellow line, Vincent?
Right now, you got around 19.5 feet.
So here's okay, so here's the arrangement. So like a standard Caltrans road width is 12 feet.
Yep.
A lane. Now this doesn't need to be nearly 24 feet, right? Because traffic's going quite slow, or they certainly should be. So it's, but you're now at 19 and a half, we're under 10 feet of lane. That's getting tight. Two trucks should pass, they'll have to really slow down. You're talking about like two F-350s, with a
Dualies, yeah.
dualies, we have those, it's gonna be very tight. Somebody might have to back up, that kind of thing, or at least get right over to the curb's edge.
How much would it cost to try to widen the road at the same time?
So Vincent, I don't even know, you can pull up that diagram that shows like where the infrastructure problems are.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best I got right now.
Okay, so this is the survey work. You see that circle on the bottom of the screen right by that fuchsia line? That's a drainage inlet, and the curb for the road is inside the line. If we were to widen the roadway, let's say you're gonna widen the sidewalk another foot,
Yeah.
and then widen the roadway, at that point, you might as well widen the roadway 2 feet. You'd have to remove that DI and then put it flush with the new road surface. And then they'd have to allow water from right now, the DI is behind the curb. There'd have to be like a curb cut. I don't know, we'd have to work out the details, but, and then you have to do some retaining work, right? Do you have a plan that shows the topography on that side?
Yeah, one sec. Seem to have lost the. All right. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah. So I know we haven't embarked on a design that widens this out. But if the sidewalk were a foot wider and we wanted to regain the space we lost, so add like 2 feet at that point to the south side of the road, you have any, other than that drain, is there any other obstacles that would require something as severe as like a retaining wall, or it's just regrading? What do you think, Vince?
I think the grades themselves, because your property line is relatively close to that area, you're gonna have to retain it. Otherwise, there's gonna be a really, really steep drop that's might not be 2 to 1, so that's not going to be compliant.
We have actually, our property goes quite a ways back. It's out. Our property line goes further than the fence line.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, there's the neighbor put their fence over the district's property some years ago.
In that case, we could regrade. We could regrade and then shift that drop inlet a little bit. I don't think we have enough information right now to know where that line is or where it goes. I think that's very important to know before we proceed with this step.
Would you have any, let's say there was nothing that was terrible with regard to where the line goes and it didn't conflict with those improvements. Would you have any way of guesstimating what widening the roadway would cost us in addition to the 130 grand we're already looking at?
For cost, yeah, no, I can't give you a cost on the top of my head. I could give you quantities, but not a cost.
It wouldn't, I don't think it would double what we've already talked about, the 130 that we're already adding in, because that's a lot of concrete work and
right
stuff. So it's not going to be to that magnitude. Hopefully.
Melissa, you're the expert here. What do you think?
It's, the entryway is already narrow, right? And so going further into the entryway is certainly a cause for concern. Realistically, if we kept it at a 4-foot sidewalk for the ADA ramp, right? I think there are alternatives to having the cross traffic or head against head traffic, head traffic, right? We see a lot of families drop somebody at the bottom of the parking lot and leave all their stuff there and come in and pick it up, right? And I see that more often than not, right? Because nobody wants to lug their stuff all the way up to the, so I think it's doable. I don't think we should you know, stop the project because it's a cost prohibitive. We're gonna have to deal with this if we do anything to this park, right? I think it's a tough one for me, because it's already such a narrow entryway. I think we can work with it, right? But it would have been more ideal to sort of widen on the south side in the first place. You know what I mean? It is our property, right? And to add that 2 feet, 2 feet to the south would be ideal. Right, I would see more benefit to having a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk and 2 feet to the south for the roadway expansion, right? Than anything else we're doing, honestly. Not in the park, but for the entry. So, for the way the park is used. I think there's solutions to everything though. The community's already used to not having, you know, enough parking and enough space in there, right? So they deal with it as they deal with it, right? So I think it's all workable, right? Ideally, I think we could deal with a 4 foot sidewalk. I think a 4 foot sidewalk with the rails, it's 4.5 feet, but with the rails, it's about 4 foot of usable space.
And my concern is, we came up with this nice plan. Now we're postponing it for a year, which the costs are gonna go. You know, and I would guess it's probably gonna be extended more than that. So, I mean, I kind of agree with you. We've been living with this since before I was born, which is a jillion years ago.
Fair.
And, you know, I'd like to see what you said, but again, how much is that gonna cost? How much is it gonna take away? We're already gonna have to, as I see this, postpone something that we had originally planned because of the additional cost. You know, I like to see that whole picture before I would like to see what you said. Extend the sidewalk 2 feet, extend the road, but, you know, and if we, and I don't know, but I mean, if we had to forget the children's park over there to do this, I'd say, well, I'm not sure I want to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, I think
There's a
there
lot of
is,
stuff, I guess, that I don't know.
well, I think there is there are some alternatives. So, for example, if what I wouldn't want to do is spend this money to build this sidewalk only to regret it forever. Because it's too narrow and have people back in the street. Because what's gonna end up happening is if it becomes too narrow, if it feels too narrow, then people are gonna just walk around it.
Yeah,
They're gonna drag their kids or drag their wagon around it, and we're not solving the problem that we have right now, which is people in the roadway. We can always later widen the road to the south, but you'd be blowing up all the work you did if you tried to widen the sidewalk later on. That, to me, that wouldn't make sense to build a sidewalk and then have to widen the sidewalk. I'd rather, you know, if you had two equal concerns, I'd rather make sure the sidewalk was wide enough, because we're making a big investment in that right now. That said, I think you still have an option of solving both if you'd like. You could widen the sidewalk another foot, which would at least, that way you'd have very few instances where people couldn't pass each other. And then design the south roadway, fix that design it properly and bid that as a bid alternate like we are with the rest of the walkway. Bid it out as a bid alternate, an ad. And then when you actually have real bids to look at, you can say, okay, hey, I want to do both, or I want to do this, but not this, or we can't afford to do either.
I think we need that information before it goes to the board.
But you don't get that information till it's way late, right? You're not gonna know that information until the bids are already in and you're ready to award it. We might know cost estimates, but the cost estimates, I don't want to dismiss their value. They're very valuable, but that doesn't mean that you can get it built for that. Maybe bids come in less than the cost estimates. Maybe they come in more. Maybe they come in a lot more. I mean, a lot of projects don't move forward because the bids don't align with the cost estimates. Now, in this case, I don't know that there's anything wrong. I mean, we're not adding a lot of, we're already doing all this same work. The plans already have concrete work and slopes and ADA stuff already. So it's not like we're adding such complexity that the contractors that were previously gonna look at this work can no longer, do this kind of work or something.
I guess what I would like to do is widen the sidewalk and then worry about the road.
Yeah, I mean, we can't do anything to the park, period, unless we do this, right?
Absolutely.
And I think modernizing the park to a certain degree is sort of the priority, right? And then, adding a safe entryway for pedestrians into the park is, among the top priorities within that, right? I think it'd be reasonable to engineer those specs, right? This is the south side that is showing up right now. To engineer the idea of widening that, right? I mean, we can widen the roadway at a later date, while still having a manageable entry and a sidewalk we can deal with, right?
I mean,
Go ahead.
I'd like to see us, I guess, go ahead with that, and then if we put out the bid later and it was too expensive, we wouldn't have to do it. But I think we probably should plan for both.
Yeah.
Vincent, what do you think?
I'm thinking if they absolutely require you to put in this work, this access right here, not because we're doing proposed work here, but because they want it for the rest of the improvements, then this is really the only option. And you can address the road width with expanding the south side if need be. But in a better world, I would say, if they allow you to not touch this at all, I would prefer that. And then if they're able to say, because we're not improving it at all and we're leaving it existing, then we technically don't have to fix it.
Yeah, I think our understanding is that the county's position on this is you're putting improvements in the park, you've got to achieve ADA compliance.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you just said.
Well, we are achieving ADA compliance in the area we're improving, right?
Right, yeah, I agree.
But if we're not
Oh, you
touching
mean abandon the
this,
sidewalk altogether, you're saying?
right, it would be either abandon the sidewalk and you can put like a 4-foot stripe for people to walk on, even though it is 12%, it's not ADA compliant at all, but it's a stripe to have pedestrians go there if they wish. But right now you don't have an ADA access to the park from the public right away. And if you're not improving that, then I don't know, it's a little gray area. If they allow you to not touch it at all, then that would be the ideal way to go.
But I just asked that question. I thought you said.
Yeah, so here's the thing, Tina has worked with Holly, one of the other consultant members in the county, and so I don't have first-hand information, but my understanding was the county's position on this was if you're gonna make improvements in the park, you have to achieve ADA compliance to the public street.
That's always been my.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think if we didn't, I think the Vincent's alternative of just dealing with this as with paint or something is viable, because it would actually save all this money, actually save a lot more than 130,000. But it was one of our goals from years ago whenever you're at this park. So ignoring the ADA issue, because we have this concern about we have more going on at the park than they can park in the park. And so 40 or 50 cars park out on the street or more, and those people walk in. And then when they walk in, they're walking sometimes right down the center of the road with 2 trucks passing by.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. How many parking spaces are there in the park? 25?
I should know that off the top of my head, and I have no idea.
Well, I mean, we have them kind of mapped out right there. Doesn't show all of them, but no, it does.
Just buy a couple houses there, put a parking.
About 50.
50.
And the dirt lot,
And we
which
have a-
probably adds about 20, depending.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, there might be more. There's probably parking for 65 cars or something like that down there. And then we have the see down below at the bottom. It's not really shown on the screen. We have this Oh, there, yeah, this is like an overflow down at the very bottom of the screen there.
And then we're thinking widening the road on the south side, so how far, where is our property line?
Our property, zoom in right where your cursor is. The property, can you get a little tighter, Vincent, by
It
chance?
starts to,
Okay, it's kind of bad quality,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that's.
So our property line is up in the back, those trees, the first tree is in our site, is in our property, even though the fence goes around it. So that whole dirt area is in our property line,
So we could, wow,
but it's steep, it's very steep, especially in the back.
yeah, but, I mean,
So technically speaking, I think widening the road's gonna add
oh,
costs.
there we go.
Yeah, so that's the curve coming in the bottom, so you can see the slope.
It's a nice pictures, so, yeah,
Well, I'm glad you had access to all that stuff quickly.
so, yeah.
Again, I would prefer not to do anything because ever since I've been involved here, we've talked about making that better, a driveway and a walkway. So, and I'm sure that whatever work, you're correct, that whatever work that we do in the park, the county is gonna say you have to become compliant. So ADA compliant on the driveway and the whatever.
So I think the issue is, if you're concerned about the sidewalk at 4 feet being too narrow, the time to make it wider is before you construct it. The roadway could be put off, it'll be inconvenient for drivers when they pass 2 large trucks. But that could be postponed without affecting the rest of the work. But if you proceed and you ultimately decide that the sidewalk's too narrow, then you're almost starting over.
I mean, I mean, I personally like to see the sidewalk wider. I mean, even if we could do 6 feet, I'd rather see that. So, and then deal with the roadway. I mean, I would say consider widening the roadway, and as you mentioned, send it out for bid and see how much it is, and then we could make a decision at that point. But definitely, I think 4 feet is narrow. I mean, just for people passing through, it's just gonna be narrow. That's my feeling.
Yeah, so like these wagons that I see are,
4 feet's the minimum. I think 2.5 feet are your wagons, right? Something around there.
yeah, well, this one I'm looking at right now is 22.5 inches.
Wow.
And they're just a bunch of different sizes actually. Some of them are bigger. They're bulky. I mean, they're big. Here's a collapsible wagon that's, well, it's only 17.5 inches wide.
That'll fit
That would fit in the
theoretically. Yeah.
See, I don't see going even from 4 feet to 6 feet a big deal, because normally what's gonna happen, somebody sees somebody coming with a wagon, and even if you got 6 feet, they're probably gonna wait till they get down before they take theirs up.
Yeah, the issue is, like, so this handrail starting, I don't know if you can show right here, there's gonna be a continuous handrail from midway down the slope. And so it's around the corner, you can't even see, you wouldn't even be able to see the bottom side, there it is right there, so you wouldn't even be able to see who's coming down the hill.
And then I just feel like over time, people are just gonna start using the roadway.
So here's a wagon that's 24.5 inches wide. I mean, I think that the 4 feet is too narrow for 2 wagons. It's too narrow for 2 strollers.
It's narrow for 2 people.
It's-
I need to go by, I mean,
Well, I mean, I think you think about it, if you're an able-bodied person and you're walking on a regular sidewalk, let's say it's a 36, 40-inch sidewalk or something. Usually one person kind of goes to the edge or steps off the thing. Well, you can't when you have these guardrails,
Right,
right?
hop over the guardrail.
I
4
think it's-
feet, somebody your size could go by, and they're big and fat like me, and you know.
Exactly.
I mean, I think 4 feet's fine for a couple people passing each other. It'll be tight, they'll fit. But it's the equipment. It's right now, the wagons are pretty popular for these soccer moms. And I think we would feel like this failed if those people were hauling the wagons down the road. We'd like, what did we accomplish?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think we're pouring concrete, we're never gonna be able to change that, so might as well do that part right and then figure out the roadway. Because we'll have the option, we have the room. So,
We have the room, it's just money, right? And it's just what is the cost of
I
making
mean,
it?
it's just same thing like with Trader Joe's, you're trying to get in, it's so narrow, they don't even have sidewalks that you could,
Right.
you wanna try to walk in there, you can't. If you wanna walk into Mary Hill or something like that, you can, it's dangerous. So I just think the entrance is important, and I always believe, you gotta try to put in the proper infrastructure for the use that you're gonna have. I mean,
So right now, we're down to a 19.5 foot. If there's the possibility, if you want to widen the sidewalk and the roadway might or might not get widened because it's treated as a bid alternative, then I want to be careful about just how much additional width you add in the sidewalk, because it's going to potentially come out of that roadway without being replaced, at least immediately. So if we add another foot, and that's a 5 foot sidewalk, we're going to be at 18.5 foot. That's 9 foot lanes essentially. That is, my car fit there through 3 of them. But 2 full-size trucks with mirrors, they're gonna have to be right up against the curb and sticking out over the sidewalk.
regular sedans would
Yeah.
work fine.
Yeah, this isn't-
The big trucks, and
But 5 feet, to me, is still not gonna solve the problem, because people, I've seen the way they load up these wagons, and so they got stuff sticking out like that.
Yeah, I think
It's still not gonna be passable, in my opinion. An extra foot isn't gonna do anything as far as that problem.
So
In
you
my
think
mind,
it needs to be bigger than 5 feet?
I think so.
I think 5 feet might work, because we're looking at like the handrails, it's not gonna be like slatted, you know what I mean, where they could stick, if something's wide in the stroller, it could stick out, you know what I mean?
yeah.
You got
Um,
poles.
Fair. I mean, they have to, they're the ones who had kids and then put them in programs, they're gonna have to figure it out, you know what I
The
mean?
skateboard come on the top of it.
Oh yeah, they ride in the roads, it's no big deal. They have, they're not risk averse, those skateboarders. I think 5 foot would sort of accommodate the 2 wagons, you know what I mean? Some high fives on the way by, with people going, in opposite directions up and down the same ramp. And it would leave us a little, even just a foot of space for those trucks, because realistically, we live in Templeton, right? We're talking about, you either drive a Tesla or a big truck, right? So, and that's what we have there mostly, so.
So the white, the
Or a
white,
minivan, there's a lot of Honda Odysseys around.
But again, if we go out for bid and we see what the costs are, we at that point, we could see the, risk to benefit type of thing.
Absolutely.
well, except for, we're only gonna have one design on the sidewalk. And I don't know that, are you suggesting that we could have a 5 foot sidewalk and a bid alternate for a 6 foot sidewalk? Or the whole thing would change? I guess I wanna make sure that we don't get too crazy with because we're gonna have to pay for all this design work, whether you build it or
Put one of
not.
those
But is it
mirrors where you
easy?
can see at the bottom if somebody's
Some
coming
of
up.
Yeah.
So here, let me just tell you.
That's not a bad
for
idea.
Easier
Yeah,
to
really,
say
I'm not
6
kidding.
foot sidewalk and then make it narrower if we need to, or and then based on what we hear, what the road
I
is
think-
gonna cost.
No, I don't think, Vincent could probably answer the question better, but I don't think you can. We're gonna have to provide the designs for whatever we want to have bid. Whether it's a bid in the base bid or the bid alternate. So I don't think you can have, if you wanted a 5 foot and a 6 foot option, you'd have to provide 2 different designs on the work. Now, just as an example, I just looked up a double jogger. A double jogger, so these are bigger than a wagon. Probably the biggest thing that are gonna come down there. This particular one has a width of 31.5 inches, so that's a little over 2.5 feet. So at 5 feet, 2 of those couldn't pass, but we don't see those as often as the wagons.
100% correct.
I mean, we're also changing the purpose of the park as well too, right? We're adding playground, that are,
Yes.
for all kids, like, handicap as well. And then also, we were hoping that this could become an area where people could go for a walk, or do.
Yes.
So, I mean, we are trying to change the purpose of the
We are.
park. So if,
I think that the big issue is this ramp it's the soccer and softball Saturdays when the
Exactly.
sidewalk is mandatory. Otherwise, there's always parking down there.
Mhm.
There's always parking down
Even
there
with those
except for on soccer Saturdays. We have, 60, I think we can accommodate a lot of cars.
yeah.
So this sidewalk, these strollers, now obviously the ADA component's separate, but the separation from the vehicles to the pedestrians is only, in my view, really needed on soccer Saturdays and softball
Yeah,
Saturdays.
even if, even with the additional amenities, right, it's more passive use and it's not gonna fill up the parking lot the way organized use out there does, right? So, a mom or somebody bringing a bunch of kids down to go play at the playground during a summer, Wednesday or whatever, is not gonna have anywhere near the impact or not need the same kind of access, right? As soccer Saturday when we turn Everest into 7 soccer fields that are starting on 15-minute staggered start times, right? For 6 hours at a time, you know what I mean? Cause it's just, the way we use that park is staggering, right?
Yeah.
And it is never going to hit those numbers on passive use, for even like the coolest playground on the Central Coast will not gain the kind of use we see on a soccer Saturday, or the sheer numbers.
Yeah, we have 200 people down there playing games or and then
Oh,
we
yeah.
have parents. So yeah, it's really it's the soccer Saturdays that are the impact, nothing else. None of the other days concern me really with any of these issues. It's only the program days when you have the any other time, there's gonna be enough, you're not gonna have cars lined up trying to get in at the same time.
Even back when we were doing movies in the park, we'd have 200 people come out and it would look empty, right? It's really it is the organized use during those heavy traffic times.
So I think determining the minimum acceptable width of the sidewalk is really important because it does dictate how much room we lose out of the driveway and what we have to do to regain that.
The length of the driveway where it's going to be narrow, the narrowest part, like it's going to be end up being 18, 19 feet. The length it's now,
It's maybe Vincent, maybe it's
basically
150 feet long or something like that.
Is that long?
Sorry, can you say that again?
The length of the driveway before you get to the parking lot from the cul-de-sac
Or
or from
the
the
part
street.
that's going to be narrow?
Oh,
Well, the
okay.
whole thing
Let me
would be
get that.
narrow.
So you're saying from over here all the way down to
Yes,
right there?
yes.
It's 147 feet.
Because the sidewalks, whatever width we pick will be the whole width from top to bottom.
I just thought down the hill it widens before we get to the parking lot.
You can bring up an
Just kinda
aerial
like
real quick.
opens, yeah, because of the way the curve goes. The other thing realistically, while he's pulling that up, is, where
That part is.
the way people use the park, so if you look at sort of the west side on the lower end where the ramp would kind of land you, right? That's not high traffic where those trees are and along that long white, whatever that is on the middle of the screen, right? So the entry to the park is where all of the traffic is, with the pedestrians, with the 2 cars coming in at the same time. If you're coming into the park on the left-hand side there, that's not a high traffic area, right?
Yeah.
So the stroller situation there or the wagon situation there, much less concerning. Someone can be in the parking lot and it won't matter, right? Because that's not high traffic. We guide cars around in a circle starting to the, sort of a counterclockwise way, right? It's all coming to a head at that entry, that very narrow entry to the park, right? So really that is the biggest concern, right? When they get around that corner, right? And I think that's where we have to be most concerned about having like a 6-foot sidewalk or a 4-foot or a 5-foot sidewalk. As we get down into the park and, making that left-hand turn and there are people walking along that space, rarely an issue, because it's one-way traffic, right? It's when we get in and out of the park where we have two-way traffic and pedestrians, for the reality of the way it's used, so.
That's, yeah, so,
I mean, ideally, if we're gonna build a sidewalk, we'll use the sidewalk,
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
but the reality of how it's used.
So this was, in our view, the whole guardrails and the distance off the ground was a pretty big game changer. Originally, we had selected a pretty narrow sidewalk, thinking that if a stroller came up and I'm walking the sidewalk, I could just simply step right off, let the stroller pass, get right back on and keep going. But this is, it's totally different now. So I think we need some help saying, is a 4-foot between the rails wide enough? Is 5 foot wide enough? Is 5.5 foot wide enough? Once we get any wider than that, then I don't think you have an option but to widen the road. Because we lose another, at that point, if it's 5.5 feet, we'd be down to 18 feet of roadway instead of 19.5. So, and obviously we can design the road width, it's gonna add dollars to it and bid it as a bid alternate, and then you can choose the time that you award the bid, whether you want to proceed with it or not. But if it's an option and it's not mandatory, then we need to have enough width for two vehicles to pass. And I don't know, Vincent, are you you have experience in these driveway widths? What is maybe could you mention how tight can they get before we have problems?
Yeah, so we typically see, and I know this is completely not what you guys want to hear, but a two-way traffic for a drive aisle usually is like 25 feet wide. So you're already narrow in that aspect. For a two-way traffic minimum, I've seen maybe 21 feet width. Yeah, so anything that's less, I really don't have I don't know what to tell you guys.
I mean, can Vincent somehow give us an estimate, like in a couple of weeks, just to tell us how much it costs to do this roadway properly?
Well, we would need to design the work then.
We could ask them.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
he's-
so it takes some time.
Yeah, and at that point, we're committed to paying for that work, right?
Because he's like, for example, the same thing we're doing with the sidewalk, he's telling us it's gonna estimate be like about 130,000.
Right,
What can we get something like that for the roadway?
yeah, we can, but it's gonna depend on what we're asking for. Like the sidewalk width is gonna make, the wider the sidewalk is, the more expensive the road width is gonna end up being, because we're gonna have to do more grading, more changes to the road. So, both decisions kind of tie together.
Just from taking a look at it though, if we're shifting this back, you can see that this existing storm drain drop inlet is around like more than, I think is around 8 inches away. So if you're gonna have to widen this this roadway by more than 8 inches, you're gonna have to put in a new drop inlet or relocate this existing one somehow, and that's not gonna be cheap.
I think this work though is still less expensive than all the ADA compliance work on the other side.
Well, you still have to do all of that too.
Right, but I mean, we know is $130,000 addition, right? So
This is not gonna be that much, yeah.
It's
There's
not
no
gonna be-
retaining curbs here because you don't have an ADA walkway on this path, so you don't need it to be a certain slope.
All right, well, I mean, I said we should try to do it properly because it's important to get into the park. Just safety is important, traffic. So I say let's widen the road, get an estimate to widen the road, and then also widen the sidewalk. Let's do 6 feet to see what it's gonna end up being,
well, okay, so here's the deal. If you do 6 feet,
Then you have to do
you
that.
have to do the roadway.
Yeah,
work.
that's
We're
Yeah,
gonna
there's
lose-
no,
There's no way.
Well, let's just, I guess, see what it is. I mean, I hate to do the sidewalk and it's gonna be, we're not gonna be able to use it properly. So he says it's gonna at least, the roadway has to be 25 feet anyway.
Well, no,
So
it doesn't.
We've already,
No,
we've already
Didn't say- didn't say
compromised it.
it, yes.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
but,
it's not a public
ideally-
road.
Ideally, but.
What ends up happening is the narrower it gets, the more uncomfortable, and actually, there's a whole theory about designing these roadways narrower and narrower, so it slows down traffic and things like that. But in this particular case, because there's not anywhere for those vehicles to go, I mean, the narrower it is, we're gonna have other issues too, like, let's just say it's inconvenient at best. The narrower it gets, the more likely these handrails get hit by cars,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the curbs get hit by cars, we get claims, whatever, you know,
I feel like we have no choice but to widen the road. I mean, that's my, and as you said, you know, it's just gonna feel narrow. It's just, I mean, I know we're trying to save money, but it just, we need to find other place to save money. It's just, we need to do this part. That's the infrastructure. That's how everyone's gonna be getting in and getting out. And as you said, that's where the major traffic area is and the safety and. So I said this part needs to be done properly. So let's see how much it costs to widen the road and widen the sidewalk. It's gonna, you know, right now we know it's 130,000, maybe it'll be 50, 60,000 to widen the road, and that's something that we would need to, you know, look into that. That's, I'm hoping it'd be about 50, 60.
well, if you widen the sidewalk by 2 feet, we're gonna add a lot of cost to that too, or add some
It'll
cost.
be more than 130.
Yeah, the 130
There's
number
more
is gonna grow.
concrete, there's more impact, yeah.
But do you see, Vincent, the widening the sidewalk, is that a significant impact to the cost?
It's gonna add however much you want to widen it by times that linear footage. It will add cost, probably 10% of that ramp for every foot.
So,
Well, it would be my recommendation, and for twice a month, I can't see going through all of this. And it's been, I would just like to go with the 5 foot and then do the road as we need to do. If later we have to do the road, we can really widen it, but for 10 hours a month or whatever to go through all of this, this doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we could.
I don't
already-
disagree
we
with
could-
you.
No,
about
we
doing
could just,
it.
I'm just saying we could get the estimate and then we could, it'd be on the side,
No.
so we could decide whether to do it or not.
I'm not against getting the estimate if it's not gonna be a big hassle, but I agree with what Jeff said. You know, cost estimates, as valuable as they are, really, to me, are useless. I mean, we got a cost estimate when we started all of this and what happened.
Right.
It wasn't even in the ballpark. So we can come back with a cost estimate that says $150,000 or $200,000, do the whole thing. And by the time we get it built 3 years from now, it'll be 600,000. So, you know.
so let me, maybe I can characterize it this way. If you think 4 feet's just too narrow between those guardrails, and 5 feet is not ideal, but you can live with it, we could probably live with losing a foot of this roadway until we decide to widen it down the road. But taking 2 feet out of it is probably a game changer, and you're gonna end up, you're gonna have to widen the road.
Yeah.
You know, so these trucks are 8 feet wide without their mirrors. So you're gonna add another 18 inches on each side of these, you know, for a mirror. So it's really more like,
You know, I'd spend a few bucks and put a big sign up too out there, narrow roadway caution or whatever.
we could do all that.
whatever.
Absolutely.
yeah, we could do that. But I think if the wider the sidewalk is, it's gonna force us into widening this, you'll take away the choice of doing it. Right now, you can design it, you get a cost estimate, and then bid it as a bid alternate and award it or not. But if that sidewalk gets too wide, we won't have a 2-way roadway.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be, it's like, I'm sure,
What's the widest we can go?
well, you can put a full retaining wall and you could regain all the width or more, but it's just gonna cost more and more.
No,
On the sidewalk,
on the sidewalk,
Oh,
before we
you thinking 5,
do
right?
that.
I think 5
feet
I think
is
5
as
feet's
good as
it.
it can go to maintain current vehicular access
Yeah.
without widening on the south
with
side.
keeping it still optional. It's gonna be tight, but with keeping it still optional. That'd be 18.5 feet for 2-way traffic. Right now, we're at 19.5 feet.
Yeah.
With this design. And the current roadway is how, would you say, Vincent?
But hopefully you'll have less people walking.
Currently, it's 20 feet.
20, it's currently 20 feet. So this design, the current design you're looking at now loses 6 inches. If we go to 5 feet, you lose 1.5 feet.
Well, let's just, okay, I mean, I'm okay with 5 feet. Minimal, 4 feet I think is just too narrow for the sidewalk, so we could do 5 feet, but I mean.
Okay, let's do 5 feet and then we'll let's get a design for a bid alternate, and Vincent, if we need to talk to Oscar or Holly, you just let us know how we want to coordinate this to do the design work on the opposite side of the street.
Okay,
And we'll have a cost estimate and we'll plan to do a bid alternate.
okay,
And then you can make the decision that when, a year from now, basically, or 6-8 months from now, when we actually bid the work out. And at that point, you can decide how important it is. I mean, we can spend more money than we have as long as you're willing to, you're essentially going into debt to pay for these improvements, going into the future earnings, this isn't like a hard cap, but
No raises for those.
so.
Yeah, I just want to remind you
Pretty
guys
sure I'm already
that
ineligible.
the sidewalk is even though it is 5 feet, right? That's from guardrail to guardrail. It's not gonna be exactly 5 feet. So it's gonna be even more than that, maybe 6 inches more. So that's gonna affect the roadway because you're gonna have your guardrails within the walkway.
Right, but
Right.
you told me the current design's 19.5 feet, leaves 19.5 feet of roadway, right?
Yeah, right.
So if we add, and that's a 4 foot between the guardrail.
Between the guardrail right now. So we have 4.5 feet technically as the sidewalk, including the curb.
Okay, so if we add a foot to that, we'd have 5 feet between the guardrail and we'd have 18.5 feet of roadway.
Right, yeah. So you'll have, but if you look at the plans, it's gonna look like 5.5 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah, just so you guys know. Okay.
Okay,
all right,
And then, it'll add some extra cost to the engineering scope as well, right? So we
Yeah.
need to address that too for when they send the bills in. For engineering and all. We good?
all right, okay.
are we all good?
Anything else?
We good on this Everest
Yes.
Park item then?
Yeah, if that's all we're gonna talk about, yeah, we're good. I'm good, at least, you're good, okay.
All right, Vincent, thank you much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Vincent.
Okay, see you guys.
Okay, so now let's go to review page update, public hearing.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that at the very end of March, and we spent a lot of time going through all the rate calculations. And the committee directed us to proceed, although there were a couple of rates that were still needed some fine tuning. I just wanted to point out to you that since then, we've sorted out those rates. They fall into this organics recycling category that you see on the backside here. Those are the ones that were had a few errors. We found a couple of other places where there were just some very minor changes, like the roll-off calculations and on not core services, but just a few things that we resolved with the mid-states rate consultant, Justin, and sorted those out. And then we prepared this notice and it went out in the April utility billing. So the notice does explain why the rates are going up. And as we kind of talked about, it affects the rate increases affect the smallest customers the most, because of the way those fixed costs are assigned. And then a lot of it has to do with IWMA. IWMA for the smallest customers, we're only charging 30 cents and now it went to 5.4%. So essentially was like a tenfold increase on IWMA, or maybe like sixfold increase for those smaller customers. And then we did receive already one written protest and we'll keep track of those and report back to the board at your public hearing. I don't know how much it matters, but there are other agencies that are currently processing rate increases of about 40%. So ours, while they'll still be very difficult, I think in the whole scheme of things, some of these agencies are looking at really substantial rate hikes. It's really unfortunate. So that's out in.
Couple of points of clarification on this. So on the organics recycling, I just want to clarify. So for example, the 65-gallon cart is $63. So they pay the 63 plus if commercial, plus like if they have the 32-gallon cart, plus the $36?
So yes, most of these commercials, think about these commercial businesses mostly being like restaurants or something though. They probably
So-
have 2 or 3 bin yard service a
Okay,
week.
so it'd be plus whatever they,
So let's say they're a 3-yard bin twice a week. They're paying $337 for that service, or they will be.
Plus.
Plus the $63.
okay, and then the second item. On this paragraph, it says the property owner shall be responsible and liable for paying the refuse collection charges. So so for rentals, so the tenants ultimately are not responsible?
Well, that's the case for the district's water and sewer
Yeah, that's what
account,
I-
because we go after we hold the property owners responsible. I really can't say what Mid-State's collection system is,
Oh, I see.
but our ordinance allows the property owner to be responsible. I don't believe they have normally if they have much more, they'll work with their customers and things like that. I don't know if they have a history of trying to seek collections from a property owner. I don't
Okay,
believe that to be the case
okay, because isn't
in
this,
practice.
is this optional? So the everyone that's in TCSC have to have a.
Okay, it was until now, with the 1383 refuse collection service is mandatory.
Okay, so we may end up having problems like this, you think?
Well, I mean, Mid-State may.
So they could go after the property owner if, just like our water policy.
Yeah, it's a little different, because what ends up happening is, so I'm more familiar with refuse service that's provided in conjunction with water and sewer, where if you turn off the water service, they need to have it restored. It's very life altering not to have water service. But if you remove the solution to this, let's say you have a customer that's not paying, the real solution that Mid-State has is to remove the refuse containers. Well, what ends up happening is people then do illegal dumping, or they use the neighbor's containers. And so it's a lot easier for customers to live life without paying for the service.
Mhm.
So it's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
We have eventually people get their water service restored. It's just too difficult to not have it.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Those were my questions. Do you have any questions?
No,
Okay, all right. Is that it for this item?
That is,
Okay. Concerts in the park. Wow.
Here we go, summertime is here. So we have 10 concerts this year. The bands are booked, vendors are ready to go, sponsors are confirmed, most of them are paid. This will be the second year we're back after the year that shall not be discussed. And this will be the first year we're back in full where we collect all of our sponsor fees, right? Last year was sort of a makeup year to give out those things that were promised for the year. So we have 2 platinum sponsors again, which are co-presenter level sponsors. So Barrel House Brewing Company and Castoro are both back at that $5,000 level, which is very exciting. And then all the sponsors, everybody's lined up. Please note, we are keeping with sort of 2 things that we started last year. One of them, or a couple of years ago, excuse me, not having a concert the second week of the fair, because it is very low attendance for us, and it feels like a waste of our band's time. It's a waste of money to rent the park for $600 and pay the sound guy and pay the band for like the 100 people who show up for the second week of the fair. We are also going to a consistent start time across the board. Historically, we have done a 6:30 p.m. start for all concerts, and then in August, we moved 6 to 8 p.m. We are doing all concerts 6 to 8 p.m. So there's no need to change the time frame here, which I'm very excited for. The other thing that will be perhaps a little different this year, the chamber is not hosting the beer and wine garden. So we were approached by Barrel House about a couple months ago about, hey, we want to give you guys, all of the rec department, all of the beer to sell at concerts in the park. Which is a great idea, except for TCSD is not in the business of alcohol sales. So we are working with our rec foundation, who I believe is going to be the primary host for the beer and wine garden. that we will place right next to the TCSD booth. So that, and the TRF will go get the ABC requirement, or ABC permits, so that we can sell the alcohol, beer and wine. TCSD staff will not be selling alcohol, we will not be pouring alcohol. But we will help.
Not while on duty, we may have we may have TCSD staff volunteering for that.
We might have fair, thank you very much. We will be working with volunteers to staff the booth, and we're currently working with the sponsor to get them to provide all of the cups with their like branded cups for sales. We're working with the foundation to secure the ABC permit, and working with various volunteer groups to get this thing staffed. So far, all of the beer is donated, so that is pure profit, with the exception of, you know, the cost of the ABC permit, right, which the foundation is taking on anyway. So the beer is all donated, it will be all profit for us, and all of the money, except for 2 nights during the sales, which is what we gave the foundation, will come back to the recreation department. So all of the sales will come back to us. With the exception of 2 nights, the foundation is going to take those nights and use it as a small fundraiser for them, also sort of in exchange for doing the responsibilities that go along with securing the permits for this. So we are very excited about this. I don't think, you know, the Beer and Wine Garden won't take much in the way of staffing. We're definitely working with the foundation to make sure, you know, IDs are checked and things like that. We're not unaccustomed to running sort of blended events like this. We work really well together. We've had the beer run going for years where they do ID checks, things like that. There's, you know, all the liability insurance is worked out. So we're pretty excited about the possibilities this brings for just increasing the bottom line of concerts, right? I think we're gonna get quite a bit of income as a result of this, which will be super exciting.
Oh, that's
So, yeah, and it's pretty easy for us to get a couple of volunteers to work with beer. So,
Great.
I think my mom volunteered for a few of them already. So, and as I said, no TCSD staff will be paid to be pouring beer, but I'm pretty sure I suckered maybe a couple people at the tables here today to pour beers for 1 or 2
Like
nights.
one for me, one for them.
Exactly. You know, if we are not being paid to be staff and we're not wearing TCSD branded material, you know, then we are off duty, and I would just like to point that out. So, so we're pretty excited about the possibilities that it brings for concerts. It'll be nice to have everybody back again. We do have, like mentioned, you know, we're kind of killing time at the beginning of our meeting here, that we do have some fan favorites coming back. We have a lot of new bands coming out, which is really exciting. As usual, we tried to mix up the type of bands. We do like to get the cover bands because the audience likes to listen to music they know. But we try to avoid all hard rock or all classic rock or all country or whatever, and kind of mix up what we're doing. So I think we did that pretty well. A couple of fun party bands coming back, should be a good time. So
A couple of questions. So you said TRF is going to use a couple of those nights for other purposes, other fundraisers that they do. Like, do you know, like some of the examples? Is it like scholarships for the?
oh, what the foundation will use it
Yeah.
for? So there's 2 nights during concerts, and I don't know which nights they are yet, where they will keep all of the proceeds from the sales of the beer,
Yeah.
right? And the wine if we get it donated. We reached out to Castoro today. About that. What will they use it for? I don't know, but they specifically exist to help fund programs.
That's what I.
Director English is actually a part of that foundation still, despite the sort of split from TCSD that we did a couple of years ago. And he's, I believe, the treasurer this year. And he has been sort of spearheading a scholarship program.
That's what I.
And I believe a lot of this will go toward funding scholarships.
Which is
Whenever I
okay.
need them funded, I call them and they
Okay,
just
that's
send
good.
over a check.
Alright, yeah,
So-
so indirectly, it's gonna help out our
It-
program. Okay,
Exactly, and I think they still have sort of those big ticket items that they wanna help fund, whether it's, you know, their biggest ticket item, I think, is a gym, right?
Yeah.
I don't see them reaching that with the sales of beer and wine, 2 concerts. But it'll all go to the coffers to help us out. But I do believe a lot of it will be earmarked for the scholarship fund.
And then that was actually my next question as far as beer, and then you said there's gonna be wine as well then.
Yeah, we just reached out to Castoro today. We had a meeting with Barrel House yesterday to figure out some of the details, what their expectations are. It's their beer, so we want to make sure we're meeting their expectations, or whatever their expectations are, they're known, so that we can say we will either be able to meet these or not, right? So they'll be providing some branded material for the booth, right? Some Barrel House tablecloth over a table, right? Just so it looks like them, right? And we did discuss with them, hey, we're gonna ask for wine too. Hopefully you don't have an issue with that. And they were fine with it. So because Castoro is the other presenting sponsor, we want to give them sort of first right to refuse, just a bit of a, yeah, it's a courtesy, right? We have a lot of wineries we can go to that we can likely get quite a bit of wine donated for. But having wine there as well is definitely something we're working toward.
Awesome. That
Can't
sounds
be just beer, no matter how much I just want that.
All right, any questions?
Who are your food vendors this year?
We have, the market is out. They only wanted to serve on Monty Mills night, which is their night, right, to sponsor as well. So we have the Templeton Greek food coming back, and a Mexican food that I just forgot the name, Don Juan's perhaps? I think it was Don Juan's coming back. So one of the returning vendors from last year. I think it's Don Juan's.
Don Juan's is just a catering, right? They don't have a restaurant.
I think they do in a Atascadero, sort of south of Atascadero, across from the post office near Highland Park. Over there, they've got one. I don't.
Food truck, they have a food truck.
They also have a food truck, so yeah.
Yeah, that's
And they
cool.
meet all of the requirements, right? We do have for concerts, if they're serving food, they have to have a mobile food vendor permit from SLO County. They have to have a business license. They have to have a seller's permit to be able to operate. And that is all part of the vendor application, is turning all
What
of
do they
this.
pay to do that?
It depends on the size they take up. I want to say it's $100, $100 a night. So we don't do a split because I don't want to deal with under the table things or seeing receipts, things like that. And it's much more simple for us. We, a few years ago, decided we were going to charge all vendors based on the impact at the park, right? So the beer and wine garden, remember several years ago when it was taking up a lot of space, they paid a lot of money for that. It was like $500 a night for that, because they had a huge impact on how much space they were taking up at the park, right? The food vendors with the food trucks that don't have as big of an impact, I think those are down to like $150, $100 to $150. So I think we're gonna have a lemonade stand out there. It's literally, I mean, it takes up less room than this table, right? So it's smaller than a 10 by 10, and they're gonna pay somewhere, I think it was $50 to $75 a night to come out and sell, peddle their wares.
What do we pay these bands?
Oh, man,
450.
450, I think, yeah. It's consistent for every band, so,
Yeah, I know.
they're all getting the same this year, so.
All right.
And the county park, I think, costs, I don't know, about $600 or $700 a night as well. So it's phenomenal, the costs. I think the total for the county for 10 nights is about $5,500. So.
They don't waive it?
Oh, absolutely not.
Are you kidding?
Absolutely.
They have grants that they for.
We have-
we
for
do
the
get-
community.
Through the Board of Supervisors, there's
Yeah.
community grants available. And so we've applied for one. And we usually get about $1,000 to $2,000 typically from John Pashong.
Yeah.
Right? So we haven't heard from them yet about that, but it's been submitted, so. And we've received it every year for 7 or 8 years. So there might be a point where they say, look, you've gotten enough. I think they have plenty of funding available for community grants, so.
I believe the choice.
Yeah, that's our, so I mean, really, the band cost is the cheapest of all
The
the
bands are
activities.
the cheapest.
It's the sound guy costs, that sounds expensive, the park, the security.
The sound guy's what, $500 or something?
Yeah, somewhere around there. There's Bill Gaines is on here as a sponsor because he gives us serious discounts. He gives us an in-kind sponsorship, right? If we were to hire him for an event the way we do, it would be upwards of $1,000 a night, well over. I mean, they're bringing out the truck, the certified sound guy, and some really incredible equipment to make sure that we can hear properly, right? So it's definitely less expensive than what we would charge for, say, a private event, so.
It's amazing to me that these bands.
What's that?
It's amazing to me that the bands play for $450.
Well, I think that.
It'll go up.
They get exposure,
Yeah.
they're getting exposure too, right?
Absolutely.
For their bookings at weddings and.
Oh, they get a lot of, they get a
Well,
lot of
until they get
bookings
big
out of
and
our
then they
concerts in
won't.
the park. Yeah.
I mean, Monty Mills,
Yeah, it's,
he's just doing it to be doing it.
exactly. He likes to be busy. And I think, you know, like Jeff said, they get other gigs out of doing this because you have a captive audience, out there, right? And if they like you, they will come up and get your card and they will book you for whatever their event is coming up, so.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Is that it? Awesome.
On
That's that
concerts.
report? Yeah, all right, awesome. Thank you, appreciate it, very exciting.
Yeah.
Glad to see everyone,
It's-
everything's back again.
It's exciting.
Yeah. And then final item, Parks and Recreation update.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this.
Oh, look, it's just the little things. John Doss has been going strong now for what, almost 2 full seasons. Softball ends on Saturday for the regular season. We have some all-star tournament thing going on too, but so he's getting through 2 seasons and doing really well. It's nice to have him aboard. Sidebar, I got to see Ken Zink yesterday and hold baby Zink and it was adorable. So Leo Ryder was born on April 22nd. And he, no surprise, loves me. So, you know, we bonded yesterday. It's cool. For overall recreation update, I gave you guys sort of 2 flyers here. One of them during the winter, really, we had an intern. So I had her come up with like a bit of a summer activity guide. So spring and summer, so we could send this to our family email list and they could see all of the exciting things coming into play this season. So as you can see, between now and August, we're very, very busy. So flag football is starting. We have a couple weeks left of registration. That'll start on June 17th. We had a spring break skate camp that was a lot of fun, something like, I think there were 20 kids, 25 kids registered for that. It was great. The instructor actually donated all of his time. So the only cost was for snacks out there. And then me, because he ended up needing some help. So I ended up helping him out most of the days, which was super fun. The Clutter to Cash yard sale went really well. We ended up with something like 90 participants again, which is great. We just started soccer registration this week. Already, we have 45 people registered, 45 children registered and 5 coaches. So I have a feeling this is going to be a big season. We just talked concerts, and then we have the soccer camps coming up at Everest. Those are over the summertime. These are my favorite camps because these are private companies that come in, they take all their registrations, they come in and run the camp, and then they send me a check for our percentage, our cut for use of the park. And they're both fantastic camps. They're set up far enough apart to really get some good participation numbers, and they're very different types of camps. The one soccer school camp in July is definitely geared toward the kids who are bleeding little soccer balls already. Challenger Sports Camp is a great overview for the kid you just want to keep busy. We have drop-in basketball happening at the high school every Monday, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. operated by the high school coaches. Just found out Andrew Cherry stepped down again, but Lauren Ramos has taken over, which is pretty cool because he used to work for us. So actually he worked for us when I worked for us as kids. We went to high school together. He's got a great mind for it, played professionally over in Europe. So he's running basketball drop-in clinics. And then we have a camp that we just got posted up on the website as well in August. Generating lots of chatter, lots of fun basketball happening. So, you know, and that's just in the next couple months.
That's very busy.
Also, we have a park improvement plan going on. I don't know if you heard about that. So.
Actually.
No, tell me about the park improvement program.
Okay, well, you know, ADA is no.
So, I mean, this is all wonderful. You're gonna be busy. As a Can you update us on your staffing situation? How is that going? Are you well staffed at this point?
We have some very good, the high school kids are amazing, right? So we have a lot of kids that are getting outside of their comfort zone to umpire softball right now, and they're doing very well. I think soccer and basketball will always have plenty of staff. It's really an issue of how many teams we have, which tells us how many games we have, which tells us how many refs we need, right? But those kids, they like to work, so they like to work in sports because it's easy. As far as like me and Bree goes, Bree's on vacation next week. I think it's some 50th birthday trip or another that was supposed to happen, so she's celebrating 51 perhaps. So she's doing really well. John is catching up. He's no Ken, right? But it's hard to replace a guy who was there for 7 years and had a degree in recreation, right? But he is doing very well overall. He's the right guy for the job, knows the sports really well, and is really good at, cheerleading the kids and all of that. So, he ran Paso adult softball for a while, for years actually. And so he's really well versed in rules and dealing with some of the sort of intense or more negative sides of dealing with sports, right? And he's got a good way about him for dealing with that. Few adjustments to get back to like you're dealing with parents now and not just adults, right? Which is a different way of communicating, right? So yeah, it's coming along.
How long has he been working now?
He started, I want to say January 9th. He started, yeah. I think he missed the first day of basketball games, but was there for the rest of them, somewhere around there. So actually, no, he did work basketball games because he didn't work for us yet. He worked as a referee and then he started, it really messed up payroll. So we have a new parks maintenance person starting. He'll be coming Monday, actually.
Yeah,
So
Nathan Mann
Nathan Mann.
starts Monday.
Okay.
He is a Templeton High School graduate. So I think that'll be pretty cool.
So he just graduated or?
He
I would say about 5 years
4 years
ago.
ago, somewhere, yeah, he's young. He's definitely gonna be green, right? He'll have a lot to learn. But he's had some maintenance jobs in the past. He worked at a golf course in Carolina, one of the Carolinas. There you go. Where it rains, right? So he
What's
does
that?
understand the idea of like, turf replacement, because he worked at a golf course and when you change greens around, those kinds of things. I think he'll have a lot to learn about. It's a big job for a young man, right? But he does put off the impression that he likes to be busy.
Okay.
He likes to tinker on things, right? It's a very independent job, so I'm sure he'll take a little hand holding, right? And then I'll spend quite a bit of time with him as we're lining out flag football fields, because that'll need to happen and nobody in the district knows how to do it now except for me. So,
Wow.
so I gotta teach John and, the new kid,
Okay.
how to deal with that. So, and then related to that, on the parks maintenance side, we had an irrigation controller go out. So we've been watering the parks as much as possible, but I think we just settled on what we're gonna do for the replacement controller. So we should be able to get some more water
So-
on those, on Evers specifically.
Oh, okay, so just for one part? right?
Just at
Okay.
Evers, yeah.
Okay, so you've been,
Bethel's a whole nother set of.
so you have to go there manually trying to turn on the
Yeah,
Yep.
water sprinkler?
Yep, so
Well,
it's pretty
and
exciting.
it's been.
But I think, and big kudos to Justin, he's been doing a lot of work to, a lot of research to figure out what the best controllers are gonna be for us and what comes highly recommended by other locals, other local municipalities, so. And I think we settled on one today, so I think we'll have something installed real quick, like to sort of alleviate that issue.
Because you gotta put something in that's gonna work with whatever we're gonna do down the road too, right?
Exactly, exactly, and that's definitely, it's been part of those discussions,
Excellent.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome, well, thank you for the report, anything else, or?
I feel like that's,
So how's the director of Parks and Rec doing?
I'm going on vacation in June. Going to Alaska, I'll get 10 consecutive days off. That'll be
Jeff, you approved that?
so.
I must have.
I didn't submit for that yet.
I'm sure she
Did
did.
you go fishing when you go to Alaska or?
We're doing a cruise, when my grandma passed away in 2020. And they had to, sell the house and deal with all of that. So my mom just decided she wanted to take everybody on a cruise. Because she's in a very lucky position throughout her life, working and retiring and all of that. So all 12 of us, which is just like me and my brother and all of his kids. right? So we're going, and mom paid for it. So we're going on a cruise to Alaska from basically the June 19th to 29th. So
hear
we
that's
have
one of the
some
best
time off in
cruises.
between, but
That's one of the best cruises. you can go
yeah,
on.
it's gonna
I
be
hear
pretty
it's
amazing.
really-
She's been on one years and years ago, and so I think that was kind of a trigger, was wanting to take us all on it. So we had a broken arm at the skate park the other day. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. Compound fracture. Grown man out there skating. We had just had utilities crew come out and paint over some graffiti, so I was going out to remove the caution tape, and he was like, yeah, did you guys like paint the concrete? And I was like, shut up, man, there's graffiti, right? So we're talking, and he's a great guy. And I go inside, and all of a sudden the ambulance is coming by, and all the kids are running in, come out here, Melissa, right? So he took a spill, just did whatever he was working on, whatever trick he was working on did not go right. And I think he's probably about 35, right? He's a grown man. And so yeah, he comes out calm as ever, I'm gonna need 911, right? Looking at his bone sticking out of his arm. It was fantastic. So I need, I know, sorry. It was pretty gnarly, man. It was awesome. I don't know. Actually. It would not surprise me. Would not surprise me. So yeah, it's skate park's actually going really well right now. I've been talking to those guys a lot about
That's good. That's good. to
maturing
hear.
themselves. So
That's good here. I know we had a low point there for a little bit. But
yeah, it's gonna go through cycles, and it always will. Right, I always get nervous when spring comes because
Yeah.
it's light for a lot longer, and everybody gets a little nuts for a minute. Summer is another one. There'll be a few times during summer where I'm like, just fill it with sand and cover them up.
Yeah.
But we have a really good crew right now that's out there a lot. That is, they're working a lot in the garden, which is really nice. And so I think we're on the up and up with them right now. We're on an upswing.
Awesome.
We'll see.
Great.
We'll talk next month.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's good. Anything else? Anything
Good.
else?
Nothing else, and we'll, if things stay reasonable on the Everest Park, we'll just press forward. If we run into another
Okay.
hiccup that sounds different from what you heard today, or shocking or something like that, we'll reconvene.
Okay, all right, well, great, thank you. All right, meeting adjourned at 3:10. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was